Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 12 o'clock, or is that right, or 12:01? And I'd like to have a roll call. Can you have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Richard Perales,
Here.
Osvaldo Lara, Guillermo Cavazos, here. Javier Compián,
Here.
Ancho Avery, Louis LeBeau, here. Javier Martinez, Jose Gonzalez, Richard Norton, here. For the record, Mr. Chairman, you do have quorum.
Okay, good. Have you all had a chance to look at the minutes of June 12th?
I move we approve.
Okay, it's been moved. Do you have a second?
Second.
And I have a second, Mr. Compián, that we approve the minutes of June 12th. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Are you all going to talk to us about something, or do we?
Yes, sir. Mr. Snagman has a training he would like to just briefly discuss with you.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to sit from here and use the, if you want to switch to the view for the presentation, I can. I would do that. And I've set a timer for 15 minutes. I'll try to stick to that. As promised, we're going to have a little training session. What this is really is an opportunity to show you what our plan is to give you a training at greater length at another time. However, I do have a brief preview of some of the material that we're going to be going over in these trainings to start the discussion and to start the training off.
Do you want to do this before we take up the items on the agenda? Or?
I would like to, if that's okay, because it's relevant to the
meeting here?
It's relevant to the meeting, yes.
How long will this take?
Excuse me?
How long will this training take?
I've set my alarm for 15 minutes.
15, okay.
So I'll go over the purpose of why we want to do training, what the structure of this training will be, how we'll schedule this training with you, and then I'll give you a little preview of the training that we're going to do and talk about our role as staff. So why are we doing this training? New board members need orientation. How many of you are new? Would consider yourself a new board member? A couple? Have
What do you consider new?
Within the last year, been appointed. Did you receive any training or any orientation? No. Okay, well, we need to give you that. We need to go over some things. Now, for those of you who are more experienced, I strongly believe you can teach an old dog new tricks. So
You always need to remind me.
we always
It
need
won't hurt.
reminders.
Always young people say that.
Well, one day I'll be an old dog. I'll stop saying it. Stop saying it too. Question for the board. Why do you think Board of Adjustments were created?
For the variances that need to be done through planning and zoning.
Okay?
Planning and zoning don't want to take that up, so it goes to Board of Adjustments.
Okay? Anybody want to add to that? Why were Board of Adjustments created?
But as a training or for selected or what?
Why were Board of Adjustments created by cities? Why did they start having
Well,
these
the whole
boards?
idea of independent work, instead of political thing, obviously, to.
Extenuating circumstances?
Yes.
There's always extenuating.
Exactly. Exactly. The city council, originally city councils, they've been around for hundreds of years, the idea of a city council. When they adopted planning and zoning in the 1930s in the United States, they started having planning commissions, but they quickly realized that you couldn't anticipate everything with your rules. You have to have a way for there to be appeals, and you want to remove that from the politics. And so a body separate from planning commission, separate from city council, is designated to be an appeal process for special and unusual circumstances. Now, the structure of this training, what we'd like to do is go over, this is not today, this is at a future date. We want to go over the state and local regulations governing Board of Adjustments. We want to talk about Robert's Rule of Orders. That's always good to review, why we do that and how it's done. We'd also like to talk about ethical guidelines, conflicts of interest, communications with application, people who submit applications or council members or commission members. We want to go over that with you and make sure you understand what are good ethical practices. We'd also want to go through some examples of cases with you, real cases that have been done in the past, in this meeting, I understand sometimes it's a little challenging. Maybe you want to ask more questions, but you don't want to take too much time. Maybe you want to ask a question, but you're afraid it sounds too dumb. I'm one who firmly believes there are no dumb questions, because I ask a lot of them myself. So sometimes we need a different setting where you can just feel free to really go through and pick through the process and ask questions. We'll allow for that in this training. What we want to do is have a 1 to 2 hour training. We thought about having it as a meeting that we'd have to call, but then what if everybody could make it? Maybe we could do 2, but even then, what if somebody couldn't make it? We're going to try a different approach. We're going to contact each of you over the next, within the next week or 2. Fernando is going to be tasked with that. We're going to schedule a training that works for you. If that's Tuesday evening at 10 p.m. or Saturday morning at 10 a.m., whatever the time is, we will make ourselves available to fit your schedule to make sure we do this training for each individual board member in the next 6 weeks. Separately, or if a few of you all want to meet together, it's fine. We just can't form a body, otherwise we'd have to notice. So,
You can have 4, but you can't have 5.
right. But I anticipate that it'd be fitted to your schedule, so these would really be one, at most, maybe a couple of you could find a time together. But we'll work with you. Fernando will contact each of you and figure out what's best for your schedule within the next 6 weeks. And then in the future, we can do trainings maybe once a year, maybe do those more formally, and then anybody that's new, we give them an orientation like this. So we can shorten the future trainings because we're doing an actual training orientation in the next 6 weeks. Now, a little training preview. I want to go over some important things. We won't go in depth today. What is the Board of Adjustment? It's officially called the Zoning Board of Adjustment. It's a sovereign board. You have final authority on these appeals. If somebody doesn't like what you say, their option is not city council. Their option after that would be to appeal to a district court, to actually take it legally somewhere else. So as far as the city is concerned, you're the final authority on these appeal cases. Now, the purpose of this, as we spoke about, was so that there is a process for appeals when there are unusual circumstances or other cases that we'll discuss. But it basically breaks down into 2 areas: administrative appeals and substantive appeals. Administrative appeals are very clear. The staff has made a mistake. We're not perfect. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we might give wrong information or approve something. And if someone that's an application can demonstrate that we have given them wrong information in an email or in a communication, that they've made an investment based on that wrong communication, that wrong information, or a wrong decision that staff has made, then it would be unfair for us to hold them to the same standard. So we have an appeal process where they can hear that. Now, we hear that all the time. Oh, you told us this, you told us that. That's why we say it has to be documented, because we're very careful about what we communicate. We don't just tell people what they can do. It's very important for us to know the rules and to deliver those rules correctly. So it has to go through a formal process where they would claim that they've been given wrong information and demonstrate that. The burden of proof is on them. Now, substantive appeals are where it gets a little complicated. These are where permitting the reconstruction of a damaged or non-conforming building. So maybe there's an act of God, somebody's building is destroyed, they want to rebuild it, and they'd have to demonstrate that they're rebuilding it the way it was before. And sometimes that's really a rare case that happens. The majority of substantive cases are where someone is asking to vary the setback, the height, the distance requirements, something about the land use development code requirements. Now, here's the key. They may ask for that, but the rules are very clear. The Laredo City ordinances and the state code, the local government code of Texas, very specific. These variances should only be granted in peculiar and unusual circumstances where a hardship is being created. Let's very quickly review what that means. Is a hardship created? Hardships cannot be personal. They have to be based on the property. In other words, if somebody comes here and says, oh, the rules you have for building requirements, the materials I have to use, I can't afford that. I'm really struggling with my bills. I'm on a fixed income. All those things have nothing to do with the actual rules where you're allowed to give a variance. You're not allowed to give a variance because you feel sorry for somebody. You may want to. You may really want to. And as staff, we feel the same way. when somebody is struggling financially, we feel bad for them. But the rules do not allow us to change the rules for them because they have personal circumstances. These unusual circumstances have to be related to the property, not the individual, not the individual's financial circumstances. A couple common examples would be lots with steep slopes, where their lot's not developable because of certain configurations, or they have an irregular shaped lot. Now, it's very important to understand that these hardships cannot be created. At the county, where lots are recorded, you can record any lot. You could shave off a square foot of your backyard and record it at the county, and they'll record it, no problem. Now, that was an illegally subdivided lot, but they'll still record it. So in other words, somebody could shave off a weird-shaped lot and sell it to their neighbor. Now their neighbor wants to develop on that property, and they're going to claim, oh, well, I don't fit the, no, that was their fault for not doing due diligence and making sure that that was a legal subdivision through the city's rules. Now, sometimes that happened many decades ago, and in those circumstances, that's something we should look at as a Board of Adjustment, as a body. But oftentimes, people create hardships on themselves, and that's something they've done as the property owner, and that would not be an unusual circumstance where a hardship's created by following the rules. Hardships have to be unique to the property. So an example, remember we talked about steep slopes? Well, what if the whole neighborhood has steep slopes? And the reason the city put some slope guidelines in was because they don't want to adversely affect the neighborhood or spill over or whatever. That would not be a circumstance where it's unusual to that property because the steep slopes apply to the whole neighborhood where the rules were put in place so that there's safe and orderly development. So we need to look at not just the property but the surrounding neighbors, the surrounding properties, and really ask the question, is this a unique hardship? Is this a unique circumstance? And that's why we should be granting a variance. Another example is if the city's regulation alone can't be the hardship. For example, if an applicant requests a height variance, claiming that the height restriction constitutes a hardship, it can't be. In other words, if somebody says, oh, well, I can't build with these height restrictions. I can't do that. It won't work on my property. But the height restrictions are something that cover the entire city. That would not be a unique hardship for that property because the rules apply to everybody's properties equally. Basically, what you're trying to determine with a hardship is, does that person still have reasonable use of their property? Now, just because the rules of the city eliminate some of their uses or make the development of their property more expensive, that doesn't mean they don't have reasonable use left. In other words, we have rules in place that apply to everybody about setbacks. Those are across the board. In some places they're a little different, but they're there. Now people could get more money for their property if they could develop the whole thing. But that's not a hardship that the city restricts some amount of development. That is allowed. The city is allowed, in other words, the citizens of the city are allowed to together agree to some restrictions on property, even though that decreases the value of the property to some degree. What reasonable use is that there is still use left for the property. Property is not left with no reasonable use because regulations limit the size or design of the structure or make it more expensive to build. In general, the fact that a regulation reduces the potential profitability of an otherwise developable commercial or residential property does not constitute a lack of reasonable use. So when you're trying to determine if they truly have a hardship, what you should be asking yourself about this property is, can it still be used reasonably? Can they still, if it's a single family residence and they want to expand it in a way that's illegal, can they still use it as a single family property? Can they still have the things that are associated with a single family property, a home and some living space? Sure, they might want to make it bigger, but can they still use it as a single family home? Now, if the rules affected the property in such a way that they can't use it in a way that would be reasonable, then that's a valid reason that the board should be considering a variance to give them reasonable use. One thing I want to say about processing Board of Applications, right now the way that the Texas State Code gives the Board of Adjustment the ability to create some guidelines about how applications are received and how things are processed and the rules, when you meet, how often you meet. Those things are up to you. And as staff, we might give you ideas or ask things about those things. It's ultimately up to you to decide that. Right now, the guidelines are very unclear for staff. In other words, if somebody comes for an application, even though it's clearly not something that would warrant a variance, the guidelines that in other cities they have given staff to say, no, here is a checkbox they should follow and they should meet these guidelines and then we'll hear it. Laredo hasn't done that. So what you're doing is you're hearing all applications of anybody that says, no, I know it doesn't really fit, but I want to ask anyway because things are financially tough for me right now. And because in the past the process has been misused, I think word has gotten out that, hey, if it didn't work, if I can't get my building permit, Board of Adjustment just seems to be granting them, if you can give them a good story. And that's what I've heard out there. And in other cities, they've given guidelines where applicants know, hey, these are the categories for what Board of Adjustment is willing to hear. And there are a few ways we could do that. If you're wanting to do that, let's have that discussion, and we can propose some things that you would then vote on in City Council as well. And that would allow you to not have to spend the time going through things that are clearly not warranting your time. Now, I want to just say one quick thing about staff. This is a picture of our staff. In the middle is Jesus. He just became a citizen last week, so we had a little celebration for him. And we have a great team. I'm really impressed with the staff we have. Now, we need more staff, and I'm working on that because we're really pushed with all the stuff we have. But I'm really impressed with the capability and the expertise of our staff. Fernando's a great example of that. He's 20 years with the city. He's an expert. He is the expert on the Land Use Development Code of Laredo. Nobody in the world knows more about it than him. And I'm grateful to have such a great staff. I want you to know that we are unbiased, we're unpolitical, and the recommendations we give you are based on best practices. I didn't come here with any friends. I'm hoping to make some, but I don't owe anybody any favors. I'm not trying to make anybody happy. I took this job to be the best city planning director that I can be. That's important to me. It means a lot. So the recommendations I give to you, the trainings I give to you, they're not to advantage any particular group or any particular person, and I hope you can trust that. That as staff, the way that we're going to work, if we give a recommendation, it's not coming because somebody pressured us, management or city council. We're giving you our professional opinion as city planners, unbiased, unpolitical. Do you have any questions?
I have a comment. I'd like that idea about that checklist, if you can use a template or you do it however you see fit, but that would, make everyone's job a little bit
I think
easier.
that, but at what level would that have to be implemented through the city? Would have to put that into their codes or that screening process that you would want to put in when an applicant comes in?
Yeah, first, we'd work with, staff would give some recommendations, Board of Adjustment would make the decision of, yeah, this looks good. Then they would have to go to City Council for a change of the ordinance. So it would be a process to change it, but essentially you would have to feel comfortable with these changes. And what we would be doing is we're not taking any authority from you. We're just taking out the clear situations where this does not warrant, and we would write that together of what you feel comfortable with, and it would be based on what the guidelines that Texas State Code allows and that other cities have done, and then that would filter out the things that are clearly not allowed a variance.
Would there be I didn't mean to.
Oh, go ahead.
Would there be an opportunity for you to be able to put together some recommendations, maybe not next meeting, or you need more time, or?
Yes, we'd need a little time, and this process, again, wouldn't be quick because it's got to go through you and then City Council, and then, that takes time. But what I would be giving to you is some recommendations, and then we could have a discussion. Maybe we go back and change it, bring it. We wouldn't move on anything till you feel comfortable.
Some of the issues that I think also to the community is, so like if they actually go through the application process with a case that's clearly going to be denied, the expenditure of time and money.
Exactly.
This can also save the community some money when situations like this take place. So that's why I think that kind of, if staff could make that kind of recommendation, we haven't voted on anything yet, but if you could do that, I think that, I would be very willing to hear any kind of recommendation staff might have about stuff like that.
If that's the general feeling of the body, we will work on that and then bring something back as a formal item for you to review and look at and give comment on
I think so. I mean, you all are the experts, like you just said.
Right.
So we're not experts by any means, so I think it would be worth everybody's time to go through that, and then if you can bring us your proposal, we can discuss it at the next meeting or a couple of meetings or.
All right, well,
My last request would be that I would like a printout of this information, because it's not in our packet. So if you could, if you
yes,
don't
I'll get
mind.
this, I'll get this to you.
Yeah, I'd like to have a copy of it.
All right. And one last comment I'll make. As one of these proposals, one thing we'll make is, as a proposal to you, is we'll have the cost of the application, Board of Adjustment application. We'll look at that and we'll have it reflect the true cost of the staff time. In most cities, to do a Board of Adjustment application is closer to $1,000 because that reflects the actual time it takes staff to go through all this. Now, other cities also provide a scholarship form of idea where somebody that can't pay that is not limited to doing a Board of Adjustment because they can't pay. You know, there's a way for somebody who financially can't afford to do it. We give them an avenue. But when you have a Board of Adjustment that is not reflecting the true cost of staff time, we spend hours and hours developing this. And what that does is it incentivizes people to, oh, well, I'll take the chance. You know, it's only a couple $100. I'll see if I can get, you know, it didn't work for me to get a building permit the right way. Now, once we bring you what the true cost is, we're going to calculate that based on the time we spend. It's your decision whether or not you want to raise that, increase it, or how much. And then, of course, it would go to City Council for final approval. All we're doing is sending them a recommendation. But at least you could see how much time we're spending on these and how much it actually costs versus what we're charging. And our intent is not to discourage anybody. It's to be accurate with how much time it costs us to prepare these.
I think it's a good idea.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Perales,
Yes.
prior to giving roll call, I failed to mention that Mr. Avery and Mr. Gonzalez would like to be excused.
April and Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to have
A motion.
Just a motion?
Yeah, like a motion that.
I'll move to excuse.
Excuse me. Okay, moved by Mr. Martinez, seconded by Mr. Horton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Okay, are we ready to proceed with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have one request right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to go in that, we go to a public hearing right now.
Move to open the public hearing.
Okay, it's been moved. You open the open hearing?
Second.
Second? Second. And second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we have a request submitted by the Texas Corps. Texas Corps Distribution Center to authorize an exception to the literal interpretation of the Laredo Land Development Code, Section 24-277, entitled Dimensional Standards by granting a variance to the setback requirements on Lot 10, Block 3, International Trade Phase 1, located at 14420 Makita Loop. Okay, is there one to speak in favor of this? Okay.
Microphone. Good afternoon, members of the board, and welcome to our city.
Thank you.
Um,
Your name for the
My
record?
name is John Valle.
Thank you.
I'm one of the principals of Park Avenue Construction, and present with us.
My name is Javier Fernandez, and I'm the president of Texas Corps.
We're a little bit of a disadvantage simply because we were advised that we were gonna be in a smaller chamber, so I didn't bring part of my staff, engineers, designers, et cetera, you know, but anyways, we'll work with what we have. Thank you for directing us this way. We have what I consider an unusual situation, and is there a plan that we can show
Yes.
in the, on the screen, or?
That's what down, isn't
Before I continue, I would like to say that before we entertained this idea, we did, and I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been in business for 30 years in this community, building mostly industrial buildings. But before I do anything, I'd like to go to the plan reviewer and explain our idea, our concept, because it's, you know, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation like this with controversy. In this situation, we did the same. Our client needed to add a chamber to his existing building, as you can see in this section right here.
What was that? He needed to add what?
We need to expand the facility, add a chamber to his existing warehouse. This is a warehouse we're looking at.
Which is the one in question, I'm sorry?
The warehouse ends in the striped,
The warehouse is.
and the yellow is what you want to expand.
Correct.
What?
We would be encroaching this expansion by about 12 feet. Right. So we figured we gotta go to the department and ask questions before we design. We go through the expense of doing all this, you know, not more and more department, they want complete set of drawings before we can submit for the permit application. Before we do that, we at least want to talk to the plan reviewer to understand his idea. Why go through the troubles? Unfortunately, the previous plan reviewer who we met with, he had told us, you're not gonna have a problem doing this. So we went ahead and we continued with our drawings. And our customer, for some reason or other, extended the project maybe a few months. Then he comes around and said, look, you know, I'm ready to continue with the expansion. Great news, the department said, no problem, we move forward. And now we have a new plan examiner. The new plan examiner says, look, you know, I was not privy to this. We're obviously encroaching in a setback. And we explained the reasoning. This is a series of lots. The front of the building is,
Fernando?
is
Is this the
really,
front?
I need the other plan, Mr.
Here,
Fernando.
let me just show you real quick. This warehouse sits on several lots.
Several?
Mhm.
The actual warehouse sits between lots 1 and 10. However, their expansion, this lot actually, right, the front is actually through investment. So this is a front lot setback of 25 feet. So,
How many feet?
Yeah, because,
25 feet.
because here it says they're asking for a variance from 20 to 12 and a half, instead of 25 to 12 and a
It
half.
should be 25. That's my mistake.
Okay, so they're asking now for
It should be 25.
12 and a
That's my
half
mistake.
feet setback.
Yes, that's my mistake. It should be 25 feet. And this is actually the front. However, since the warehouse sits on several lots, they're asking for a variance of the front yard setback from 25 feet to 12 feet.
So that area right there, you said that this is the front, is that, what's?
The actual front is actually through Maquila, all right? Maquila Loop.
So this is the back?
So
Well, it's
this
kind-
would be considered the back of the warehouse.
Which is the front then?
The front is, of the warehouse, is right through here.
Okay, the entrance to the warehouse is over here on Maquila,
It's also through my.
okay?
Yes, that's right.
But it goes all the way to the other block. You know, it goes all the way to whatever
Yeah,
avenue
block.
that is,
The other lot. yes.
okay? So they're asking now, they're saying, this is the front part of the back lot. There's two
Yeah,
lots.
and you
Well,
can,
so they're gonna have two fronts?
Well, they could have.
it could, I guess, but no.
I guess
Well,
they
you're
could've.
taking one as front and one as
This
front.
would be considered what they consider the rear.
It's because it's two lots, so you have
Right.
two fronts.
So
And it goes the
The ex-
whole length
the
of,
expansion is on lot 10?
Yes. The expansion is on lot 10.
The original warehouse was built on two lots,
Right,
with the front facing the other street,
Maquila.
Maquila.
okay.
And it's close to a 78,000 square foot warehouse.
Okay.
We have a space on the back of our warehouse, or of our existing warehouse, that we want to take advantage of and build an additional close to 7,500 feet.
Is that current warehouse conforming at this point in time?
Is that for a warehouse what?
It's conforming?
Yes.
It's not over that line, because I think it's a little vague. The red line would be the setback they're taking, but the shaded area would be all new construction?
That would be correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so it's
We
conforming
have
at
a
this point.
picture of the
I think
front
it's,
of
the whole
warehouse.
thing boils down
Yeah.
to, it's what your definition is.
I only have a
Because,
picture of
The
the
back
actual.
part is
Well-
actually the front of the actual lot, that's the way it's supposed to be, but
I
it's
only
gonna be
have
the
this
back of the warehouse. You wanna consider it the back or the front?
This is the front of the warehouse, the actual
That's
front of the
Maquila?
warehouse.
Is that
Maquila.
Maquila?
And you
Maquila.
can see we have a setback of more than what we need, because we have the parking lot for our employees and customers.
Yes, sir.
So actually, when we built the warehouse, as you see there, we left all that space in the front. We didn't go all the way back at that time because we did not need the space, but now we're needing additional space, which is basically 4 more doors. We actually have right now 31 doors. We want to go up to 35 doors, which is just an additional 10% more of the warehouse to use up all the space that we have on those 2 lots. Now, we have a trailer parking over here on this area for maybe close to 150 trailers. But we need additional space to park trailers on the side of the warehouse to do more offloading and loading. We need 4 more doors. Right now, we're leasing another warehouse about 2 blocks from there, but it's inconvenient to move freight back and forth from one warehouse to the other. But we're only asking for permission to expand that warehouse a little bit more, but the setback on the front of the warehouse, what we consider the front of the warehouse, is much
25
more.
feet. This is our front setback, and we're requesting this setback.
For
be
the back.
considered more of a rear setback of 10 feet, which is the norm. If this property would be the rear part of the property, and this is the front.
So the variance you're asking for is, how much variance?
12 feet.
12 feet?
From 25
And right
feet
now it
to-
has how many total? I mean, I'm not.
Right now,
Now we have 25 feet.
25? So you're looking at half of the halfway or what?
Yes, pretty much. Now,
Are the other people that are on Investment Avenue, are their fronts on Investment Avenue also? Those lots front Investment Avenue?
Yes.
there's another consideration. On Trade Center, if you see the hatched line, the red hatched line, that's your 10-foot setback. We kicked the building another 5 feet backwards. There is no encroachment on this corner for truck visibility by adding this additional 12 feet. The front of the warehouse, this is pretty much the entrance. The first thing you see as you drive into this park, which is Pan American, not Pan, ITC, this is the first building that you see. So this is, by default, the front of the building.
If you put the doors back and you only have 12 and a half feet, where are you gonna park the trucks? If the truck has to back into the door, I'm assuming that's what you do. So
We can
you only
fit-
have 12 and a half feet before you're out of your own space. But if you build that building all the way there and the truck has to go there and back the truck in to unload or load, you're gonna take how many more feet of this 12 and a half feet that you have left?
We're not taking any more, because we have a fence right here, this is our fence line.
We have our parking lot there.
Now, you're talking parking, I'm just talking
It's not gonna
about
be on the street.
load or unloading.
Huh?
I'm talking about, you're saying you're putting doors.
Four doors,
I'm assuming those doors open.
yes,
I'm assuming a truck has to back into the door.
yes.
You only have 12 and a half feet from, if we give you the variance, you only have 12 and a half feet before you're out of your own property. Is that correct?
We jackknife in here, we have all this space, that's why we have this space, so you can.
The doors aren't there, though.
But
The doors are facing,
The doors would be right here.
oh, those are the doors, not the doors?
Yes, sir. This is the street over here,
There's no doors on that.
That's my question.
and we have about an
The
8-foot
doors are
L.
inside our property.
Okay, but my question was, I thought the doors
No.
were the other way.
The doors would be right here. Additional trucks would be right here.
So the reason, Fernando, is that this was left, because that was considered the front, that's why the setback is 25.
That is correct.
So now it's the back, and so,
Well, in reality, it's still the front, however, they're using it as the back.
but they got approved to do the front to Maquila.
But the front is on Maquila because that's a
And
separate
so,
lot.
It's a separate lot because that's how it was platted. And
One of the issues I discussed with Mr. Valle is he can replat the property, all right, and designate that area as the rear.
Which
In
would
the
be,
rear.
the setbacks would then be 10 feet on the rear.
The setback would be what?
10
10.
feet
10 feet?
on the rear.
In essence, if we go the long way, we can get this done. And all we're asking is save us 3 to 4 months and a bunch of cash to get this thing replatted. But, we're not asking something it's impossible. It can be done if we replat. But we're running out of time. We need to, Mr. Fernandez, our client, had a project, and this building was scheduled, so we had to put everything on hold due to this new change. So,
Okay, any more questions from?
Is this a test or is this real? I'm just curious.
Well,
If this is a test, I'm gonna say one
I'm
way.
going to ask what was asked before. Are there any unusual or peculiar circumstances regarding the property that prevent its reasonable use otherwise?
No, just they want extra space.
are you asking staff or are you asking?
Anybody.
Well,
I just
Anybody
had-
that wants to answer that question?
If I can make a comment, the first thing that was said is maybe the previous director said that this could work. Well, we've explained to you already how it could have worked. If from the beginning of the process, they started the plating process, then it wouldn't have taken 3 additional months from now when they first approached the director. So whoever they talked with, I don't know that conversation, and I don't see any documentation that occurred. What I'm guessing is, if somebody came us to ask, hey, can we move this setback? What we would tell them is, well, if this was replatted as one lot, you could make that the rear setback and it would go down to 10 feet. And so, let's assume that that's what they were told. Yes, they can still do that today, and it will take 2 to 3 months for that to happen, to replat it. It's a fairly simple process. But as far as I understand, there are no unusual circumstances outside of that. What they're asking for is for you to not follow the rules to save them some time.
It's not just 1 or 2 feet, it's half of the.
The staff
variance.
recommendation is to deny the variance.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Until it's replatted or what?
No.
Well, that's an option.
But that would bring this into compliance, right, the plating?
Yes, if they replat.
So, just to get this straight, if they replat it, they would not be here asking for a variance?
That is correct.
Okay.
The problem is, the situation is what comes first. What would have to come first to bring this about, this request?
Okay.
Well, I guess another way to say it is, if you were to deny this request for a variance, then they would come back, submit an application to replat. It would go through the design review process where staff takes a look at, all the different departments take a look at, like utilities, engineering, provide them some comments. Their engineer fixes the flat if they need to fix it. If not, it moves through quicker. If they do everything quick and right, it moves through faster. And then that plat goes through the approval process. We're doing administrative approvals now of plats, something that the code allows, so we can, if it falls within certain parameters, which this would, you're just moving one of the lot lines, then the process can be,
Setback lines.
the setback line, no,
Well,
well,
yeah,
a lot line.
lot line.
The process can be even quicker, so maybe 1 or 2 months, because it doesn't have to go to planning commission if it's just administrative. Anyway, what I'm saying is if you deny this request, you're not allowing them to do this. They just have to go the proper route, the route that everybody else has to go through, and that's to replat their property when they have a building that crosses 2 lots and they're in a similar circumstance where they want to ask for additional setback.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, and, does anybody have any, to speak on, against this proposal? Okay, do I hear that we close?
Move to close.
Okay, move that we close the, public hearing?
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, what do y'all say? Okay.
Well, I understand the difficulty for the applicant, but to deny the request is not slamming the door on the availability of them to do a replat. They still have an option that's at the, discretion of the property owner. Instead of actually granting the variance right now without having some kind of,
Process.
hardship or something involved with the particular property at hand, so.
My main concern on this is, the rationale for allowing the front to be in Maquila and not in the front, and that happened probably some time back, right?
Well, there are 2 separate lots. One of them is facing Maquila, and the other one is facing Investment. The warehouse sits on both lots,
But it's facing Maquila,
but it's facing Maquila.
okay. There are 2 lots, but it's facing Maquila regardless.
One
I mean, it's
is
still
and one's
happening.
facing the other one.
And the other one's facing the other, correct.
One is facing the other one?
One lot is facing Maquila, the other lot is facing Investment.
But
One
the
and 10.
building,
But the building sits on both lots.
Well,
but it's facing
But
Maquila.
but if there had been 2 buildings on 2 lots.
They wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, it would be different. It's just a coincidence.
It's
that
just one
there's
building.
It's just one.
In 2 lots, facing Maquila. That's my trying to clear up, myself.
You have the lots, you had
So I'm sorry, sir, the public hearing is closed. If they want to open it back up, they can.
Well, that's my main concern, that it was allowed to face, even though it was 2 blocks, to face Maquila, even though there's 2. And now we have to,
Well, they could have faced Investment and been making the same request on Maquila. Same difference.
right.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a hardship, I don't think there's any problem, there's a 2-month delay probably to do it the right way. So
You
I move
Make a
that
motion.
we deny the variance, let them
Say
get
it
it
again?
replatted and do it the right way so that it's
Okay.
done the right
Make a
way.
motion for that?
That's my motion.
I'll
Okay.
second it. I'll second. And second it? All those in
Your
favor?
motion is to follow the recommendation of staff?
Yes, correct.
That go over the staff recommendation, is that what you said?
Yes, correct. To deny the variance and let
Go through
them
the process
do the correct process,
of
come
planning?
back and let them do it.
Okay. Okay, I have moved, and we have a motion and a second, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, do you have any other?
Yeah, there's a residential.
There's another one.
Do you have any other?
There's another one.
Yeah, residential variance.
Yes,
Okay.
5B, item 5B.
I feel bad too.
Okay, again, we go into rest of the public hearing. Again, we go back to public hearing. And I have a motion for that?
So move.
Okay, and it's moved. Any second?
Second.
And second, we go into open public hearing. And there's a request from, by Juan Carlos Hernandez to authorize an exception to the literal interpretation of the Laredo Land Development Code, Section 24-77, entitled Dimensional Standards, by granting a variance to the setback requirements of Lot 3, Block 908, Western Division, located at 1707 Baltimore Street. And you going to speak on behalf?
Did we vote to open?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
You seconded, but did we vote?
Second.
Oh, did we vote?
Do
I don't think we
do we all vote on it?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. There you go.
Missed that one.
We're there.
Okay, I just read the request, so can you state your name, sir, for,
Juan Carlos Hernandez.
okay,
Good afternoon, sir.
good afternoon. Give us your,
Yeah, well, I'm actually, adding, I don't know if I can, what's the name? I'm adding an additional to my house, right? I don't know. Here. I don't know if you can see, right? I'm adding an additional, I have a porch in the front of my house, and I'm actually enclosing it, right, to extend my house a little bit to the front. Why am I doing this? Because I have 3 kids, and I'm actually trying to add, I'm trying to extend one of my son's rooms, because since it's too small, and, basically that's the reason why I'm doing this. I'm not doing it because I wanna add a storage or anything like that. I'm just trying to, like, make my house a little bit more bigger. I have 2 kids, and my house is actually small.
you have a porch there, is that what you said?
Yes, the front porch of my house, right, I'm actually, like, since there was
To
already.
enclose it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to enclose it, and, when I enclose it, I'm gonna knock down the wall that I have there from the house, and just extend, since I have my son's room in the front of the house, and I have the living room, I'm just trying to extend it. I'm not gonna.
Has this been started yet, or?
Yes. It started because, I had several people look into, when I got somebody to, go check out the house and ask for prices and stuff like that. 2 persons went and they told me that I didn't need a permit. That's my fault because I didn't investigate a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? Since I'm a first time buyer, I didn't know none of this. So I went and go ahead, they gave me prices and both of them didn't, tell me that I needed to get a permit because since it was inside the lot and stuff like that, I didn't know. So I continued the building and then.
But the
that's
builder
when they-
told you,
Excuse me?
the builder told you that it was denied?
They-
No, the builder
Yes,
told him that he
because-
didn't need a permit.
Yes,
And he
because
started
when they-
construction
Yeah.
without a permit.
Did he get a work stoppage?
Yes.
So this is something you all discovered as you were driving around or something?
The building department, one of the inspectors of the building department stopped him.
Mhm.
So kinda not really stopped him, because they told him not to do it.
Yeah, and I
The builder
actually.
told him, and he still did it.
No.
The builder
Builder
advised
told him he
him that
didn't need a permit, so the builder kind of,
Yes, because I was
Poked him in
looking
the
at
eyes
the
a
house,
little
they
bit.
were
He got
constructing
bad
the house.
advice.
We actually called 2 people to
Your name for the
go,
record?
Brenda Hernandez.
Thank you.
So they could come see, for the prices, and they said that we didn't need, a permit.
So you had people come in and
Yeah,
give
but-
you estimates,
those,
right?
Yes.
yeah, those
And
are
then
not city people.
In the process of that, they told
Yeah.
you, unbeknownst to you, that you do need a permit,
No,
right?
They didn't need a
Yeah,
permit.
They tell you didn't need one, right?
They told us that we didn't need a
Okay,
permit.
all right.
So then they gave us the orange paper to stop working, and we actually stopped. I mean, we didn't continue. That's when I went downtown and I asked for the permit and everything, and like a month so passed by, and I went to see, like, to get the status, and then they told me I couldn't get it because of the way that I was setting it more to the front or stuff like that. So, I mean, that's why I'm here now. To see,
And
right? 'Cause
but
since
you
I
said
already-
you had a porch already?
Yeah, is there any
there?
pictures of what existed prior to you doing
The
this?
porch was already there?
It was, yes, it already had concrete, and it had the
The roof,
Yes.
the,
But it didn't have the walls and it
It
didn't
didn't
have
have
the
the
wall?
walls, nothing like that. It just had the roof on top.
And so you all did this, no work permit, and then,
Well,
Mr. Norton, did you have a question for staff?
Yeah, but it's
This
really
is
not,
actual-
it's really not in relation to this, but it seems like, I think we spoke about this before, where a contractor kind of, their fault for letting start doing this thing, knowing that they were gonna be, well, not knowing that they were gonna be stopped, but if they were caught, they were gonna be stopped, and there would be problems with, you know, with what they had already spent to put. The thing is there any, my question was, is there any way that we can do something to find the builder? Because they did it knowingly against city.
For purposes of just this meeting, if we can answer that once we start a discussion and just continue getting all the facts.
Okay, sorry.
I'd be happy to answer that question.
Okay, sorry.
this is the,
This was the porch, that's my understanding, and what they did is they enclosed it to extend the bedroom and the living room.
so that porch, well, this was already built from some time back,
Yes.
yes.
okay?
It was just an open porch.
It was
So
an
they're
open
open
porch.
in 3 areas, 3 sides, except for the, of course, the main building.
Open three sides, so the
Yeah.
setback's not the same.
'Cause the
And
kids'
so it
room-
was not encroaching at that time? The
well, it
porch?
That is a porch.
probably was, but as
Yeah,
a
but it was,
porch, was a living
grandfathered.
area.
Yeah.
But porches have a different,
Yeah,
Different
designation, right?
So was the porch in compliance as it was?
Yes, the porch was in compliance. The code allows you to extend half the distance of the setback with an unenclosed overhanging porch. So the porch was legal.
Distance of the setback.
Yeah, so a 20-foot setback, they could go 10 feet. The
Porch.
porch could extend
Okay,
10
the
feet.
porch.
But it was just barely.
But it can't be enclosed. And
It
it's
cannot be enclosed.
Cannot be enclosed and it
Right,
cannot be
where's
living
that?
space.
You see, right here, front yard setbacks, porches, carports, or upper balconies, not enclosed, all sides open, with a
Mhm.
wall not more than 3 feet or similar traces, porch balconies. No closer than 50% of the front yard setback. So that's what's permitted.
So he was okay with the porch, but when he enclosed it,
It's non-compliant.
That is correct.
non-compliant.
Porch can be 50% of the setback.
10 feet.
So
10
12,
feet.
12 and a half out
10
front.
feet. However, the moment he encloses it, then he's not in compliance.
Cause it had the roof and everything on top, right, but it just did, I enclosed it, right, but since I didn't know, right, like, it's like I told you, it's our first time, right, we were first time buyers and we didn't know nothing about this. We just went by what the constructors told us, so, I mean, we didn't investigate it none
Yeah.
more because, I mean, we didn't know. So we just.
We're just trying to add a closet to the kids' room.
Sometimes these, first moves the mistakes can be very costly sometimes.
And I mean, to be honest with you guys, I already paid him a lot onto the house and all the material and everything. And now the guy, like, I've been calling him, he doesn't answer no more
Yeah, you disappeared,
Why?
Yeah.
of course.
right now. So we don't even know what to do because I mean,
Yeah.
now I've already spent money and right now.
It's very good, like you'll be very good examples for your neighbors. You know, if you're gonna do something to your house, go to the building department. Don't trust the contractor. Whoever, if it's a contractor or a
Any of
fly-by-night or whoever, he's a friend. He could be a friend.
Well, it wasn't a friend because I mean we paid so.
Well, whoever it is, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is, when you start to trust someone that you think is an experienced contractor, he knows and he's
how much of
telling
the
you.
front setback is gonna be left?
9 feet.
9 feet, 9, 6,
It's actually 9.5.
9
and a
feet,
half
6
feet.
inches.
9 feet 6.
It's
So,
supposed,
about half of it.
it's leaving 9.5 feet,
Yes.
and it's supposed to be,
It's supposed to be 20, but since he enclosed it, he's now leaving
Yeah.
9 feet, 6 inches.
Let me ask you this.
Oh,
Go ahead.
The actual setback, I mean, they were checking, we didn't know about this neither. From the street, the actual setback is supposed to be 20, right? But the house, it has 3 feet, cause you remember, we were looking into that, it has 3. But the house was actually already built like that, and the porch. So, I mean, the porch is actually only 5 feet, and I'm only enclosing that. And that's why it's leaving 9.5.
Um,
Any more questions to
no.
Ernest?
Yeah.
Any comments from anyone? Okay, do I hear a motion to close the public?
So moved.
So moved. Second. And second, that we close the public meeting. Thank you, we'll just have to discuss it, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, any discussion on this? Was it,
I mean, my discussion was,
I'm sorry?
I did my discussion prematurely because I can't blame them because they didn't know. I kind of blame the contractors because, or any builder, know that they gotta get building permits and they gotta be setbacks and all that stuff.
Or at least you have to see if you need a building permit.
Right.
At the least.
Right.
Yes, if I can, if you allow me
Please.
to answer that question,
Please.
yes, the person who, if his story is accurate, I'm sorry, Mr. Hernandez, if Mr. Hernandez's story is accurate, yes, certainly that builder would be culpable for giving misinformation and building without a permit. Now, I'm guessing that he probably didn't make that statement in writing, so it would be difficult to prove that. And I'm also guessing he's probably not insured. An insured builder who made a mistake, there's insurance for when you make mistakes like that, and this cost of taking it down and the cost of materials and everything spent can be paid for and reimbursed. So unfortunately, depending on your ruling, it would be a lesson also to make sure you're working with builders that are contracted and licensed. And those are resources we can provide if somebody came in and wanted to find where they could find licensed and insured contractors to do work like this. We would help them locate those people in the
I
city.
thought you didn't need a license to be a general contractor.
That's what I was just wondering, because there's a lot of people out
I
there,
don't
right?
think you
They-
need one in Texas.
There are.
It's my
There's a
understanding
lot
that
of
you do
people, and I
need a
mean, we
license
all
to be a
do-
general
we don't-
contractor.
No, because I mean, we all make
Not aware of that.
mistakes and stuff like that, but, I mean.
Well,
For
definitely,
plumbing and all that, yeah, but I don't think a general, a GC has to be licensed.
definitely bonded and insured.
That,
Somebody who's
yeah,
doing work.
well,
So to answer your question, yes, the person who, if Mr. Hernandez is accurate, then that person is, and they could go after that person for damages.
I would go after him if he's still there.
The thing
You
is,
guys wanna do?
you're still faced with non-compliant construction that got a work stoppage, you know, and you're still faced with this problem, you see? And I don't see where there's like, I understand y'all's, you know, first home and stuff like that, but I don't see the hardship, I don't see where there has to be, you know, is that, you know, I understand that, and I do sympathize very much with you. I just think it's a very tough lesson, when we kind of trust someone, and they're not being very forthcoming with you. And that's why I'm saying, the city departments are there to serve all taxpayers, including yourselves. To pick up the phone and call them, and tell your neighbors the same thing, because they could fall into the same trap, you know? Don't do anything, check with them, they'll let you know whether you can do it or not before you spend any money.
If I might also provide
Yes, sir.
another few comments. A building permit was not issued for this enclosure. So it is very possible that there are many things out of compliance with the way that this was built, electricity extended, or, you know, the materials that were used. So if you're also looking at whether or not to allow something that was done perhaps unsafely and built unsafely. And that's something you should consider. But this idea that the contractor told them, oh, hey, you don't need you don't need to worry about a permit. What you're thinking about doing is either making him correct or incorrect. Because I think when we approve these where there is no justifiable circumstance for a variance, you actually are allowing another route for people to do these things,
Right.
not by the rules that
Right.
were laid down and not with building permits. And the reason we do that is not to restrict what people can do, to make things that are safe. That's why building officials are there. And
Now, if we deny, are they gonna be ordered to remove these improvements?
Yes.
it would be.
Well, I mean, many times in the end, it's kind of like the buyer has to beware. I mean, that's the old maxim. I mean, like, you have to check. Because especially when you make large investments, it's important to check these things, because when you're faced with now, you're gonna have to, if you're denied, you're gonna have to get a demolition permit,
That is correct.
okay? And the issues about safety of your children in your house and the electrical and the plumbing and all that stuff has to be taken in. I know you do this stuff because you're trying to provide a better future for your children.
Yeah, that's
Obviously.
exactly what
I know
we're
that
trying to
that's your
do.
intention.
I mean, we did it with.
That's what makes it hard on the board too, when we have to decide these type of issues, and many times, you know, our hands are tied many times for the same
It's right about that,
reason.
you know, it makes it difficult enough to make a decision, but we have to abide by the guidelines from the city, you know, and so on, you know, unless there's something that's out of the ordinary, then. But, so what are the wishes of the board?
My motion is to, support the staff recommendation.
Have we closed the public hearing?
Oh, yes, I thought we did close.
We did.
Unless there's further discussion, I'll make the motion.
I thought we had closed it.
It's
He already
closed.
closed.
So,
I make a motion to support the staff recommendation and deny
Okay,
the
been
variance.
made, a motion has been made, do I hear a second?
Mr. Norton.
Ms. Norton, okay, seconded, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Sorry. Sorry.
Any more, presentations tonight? No? Okay, it's, 1:02. If there's any objections, look to adjourn.
So moved.
1:02.